Welcome to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. The wanted singer, 36, was rushed into A&E last month and underwent life-saving pacemaker surgery in Manchester, Getty. Max says his mum Babs saved his life after helping him get emergency treatment for his heart condition. In his first interview since the terrifying ordeal, Max says he feared he would die in hospital, so wrote out his will on his iPhone. He also tells how the first person he saw after his 3-hour surgery was actress girlfriend Maisie Smith, saying, "My heart rate started shooting up. I felt alive again." He also spoke of seeing the surgeon's bloodied hands during the operation last month. Max's medical drama began when he woke freezing with blue hands on December 11th. At the time he was staying with his mum Babs, 63, at her home in Manchester after returning from a month-long tour of the US. He recalled, "I hadn't been feeling myself for a few days. I started feeling a bit rough. I couldn't put my finger on it. I was quite lethargic and stuff, struggling to get out of bed. But I didn't think it was anything serious. Luckily, I'd gone around to my mum's to stay and I woke up and I remember looking at my hands and they were blue, and my arms were a gray color and I was freezing cold. I struggled to even sit up in bed." Max managed to drag himself downstairs where his mother, who works in healthcare, kept a blood pressure monitor. He said, "My blood pressure was pretty low and so was my pulse, and I realized, something's not right here. As I did that, my mum came through the door and she gasped. She said, 'What's wrong? You're blue. I need to ring the doctor now.'" Babs drove Max to their GP, where he had a checkup, but he was then sent home. Undeterred, she insisted he call a doctor friend, who told him to go straight to A&E. He said, "At this point I had a panicky feeling, but was also just absolutely knackered. I couldn't move my arms and the worst feeling was I felt like my throat was closing up. It felt like someone had their hands around my neck. Thank God I stayed at Mum's house. She saved my life." Doctors took Max's pulse at hospital before he was rushed in a wheelchair to the cardiology ward, where he was given some shocking news. He said, "Doctors asked me if I'd heard of a pacemaker as they thought I'd need one. They said, there's something not right with the bottom part of your heart. For some reason the rhythm is way off and the signal doesn't seem to be getting from the top chamber of your heart to the bottom part, the bit that pumps the blood around your body." I was in complete shock. Max then broke the bombshell news on WhatsApp to Maisie, who was 300 miles away in Kent preparing to go on stage in pantomime. He told how they made a decision she should continue playing Belle in Beauty and the Beast. Max said, "I was in the right place and, as much as it was difficult not having her around, and her head was spinning, it was better for her to focus on her work. I had my family there. It was really scary, all sorts is going on in your head, and certainly not a place I thought I'd be in at 36. I was awake all night, feeling a closing in my throat. I was really struggling to move and had really deep, slow breaths. There was nothing that they could do to stop that. I could have lived maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months, but it could have been a few hours. We didn't know. I could have only lived like that being in the state that I was in. I would have been bedbound. I couldn't walk." The former Strictly star revealed he was the youngest on the ward by at least 30 years, and feared he would die. So he left instructions on his phone of what to do with his assets in case he did not make it. He said, "That first night I wrote a will, I thought I was going to die. If I could go from being absolutely on top of the world to being told, the bottom part of your heart isn't working, I kept thinking in my head, well, what if the top half stops working overnight? When you get told that, you really realize what your responsibilities are. I've got a partner, Maisie, I've got a family, I've got 2 little nephews, and all of that stuff really comes to the front of it all. I was on the heart ward with about 6 elderly people. I was at least 30 years younger than them." Then, 2 days after being admitted to hospital, Max's heart rate had dropped to just 26 beats per minute, compared with a normal measurement of 60 to 100. Max said, "Friday, December 13th was the worst day that I had there. My heart rate and my blood pressure dropped at the same time, and that was the biggest worry. The consultants weren't there on hand to do the operation in an emergency. That IT was quite close that night. It really felt like my neck was closing up, and that's when the sort of panic really kicked in. I felt like I was dying. It was the worst. I felt emotional. On December 15th, Max was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital for a CT scan. He said, "It was so cold and it was an hour and a half long. So by the time I came out I couldn't move. I looked like that scene from E.T., where he is lying in the river. I could see myself in the reflection of the machine. My arms were blue. I had to be transferred by ambulance. I was so cold, I needed my blankets, and my mom had brought me in an electric blanket and little hand warmers. That was really tough, because I just couldn't move my hand. I kept thinking if there was an accident in the ambulance, I was gooshed." To his relief, Max's pacemaker surgery was finally set for December 18th, exactly 1 week after he had been admitted to hospital. He recalled, "I felt positive when they decided that because at least we had made a decision. Now we were working towards something. I was absolutely buzzing. You miss little things like being able to go to the toilet on your own and showering. It sounds like nothing, but after a week it's a lot. My mum brought in a picture of Maisie and Albert, my bulldog, to have on my bedside table, and a picture of my Nan, who's 94. That helped keep me going." Max's operation took 3 hours but was complicated by collapsed veins, caused by his condition. Although he was conscious, he was heavily sedated with a medication called midazolam, and witnessed some gruesome scenes. He said, "The surgery was pretty mental. It was a really odd experience. The main problem that they had when they opened me up and were trying to put the leads in was that a lot of my veins had collapsed because my heart rate was so low and I was so dehydrated all the time. I could feel something going on, but not much. I could see the surgeon through a window in a sheet over my head and I could see his frustrated expression. It's grim, but I'd look up at him and when he pulled his hands away, his gloves would just be covered in blood, and that I remember thinking, oh, my God. It was morbid. I was *ing myself. But once they'd started I was excited. They finally got the leads into my veins, but then they had to get a signal from the technician who has an iPad. The surgeon asked whether the pacemaker was working. But the technician said, no signal. At that point I started thinking, what's going to happen now? Why is there no signal? Eventually the pacemaker kicked into life. And when Max began to focus on his surroundings, he was delighted to see Maisie, who had broken off from her panto duties and dashed up north. He said, "The first face I saw was Maisie's and I remember that being really nice, like that was the first time I actually felt like a real person again, and I had a heart. I had a proper heartbeat by then as well. My heart rate started just shooting up. So I remember feeling my feet going tingly, because I think obviously the blood started to properly pump around. I was like, holy yes, I feel alive again, like it was a really nice feeling. It had been so hard being away from Maisie, but she climbed on the bed, obviously she lay on the other side of my chest to my op, and put her head on me. We just had a cuddle for a couple of hours while I talked about football and we treated it like normal. I could feel butterflies again next to her." Man City fan Max decided to go public with his ordeal by posting a video for fans from hospital on his social media. And he was delighted to communicate with other people who had similar conditions that he said, as well as watching Manchester City in hospital. I spent a lot of time on social media trying to find other people who have been through it. And that's been amazing doing that, because hearing other people's stories, and what they do is inspiring. And it's people that have got way worse heart conditions than I have, who are doing so well. I've already got a new community of people I'm talking to. The nurses on the ward were incredible, because they were the ones with me the whole time. One of them took her daughter to see the Wanted a lot, so that was nice to talk to her about, just to have a little bit of normality and talk about the stuff I love doing. They kept trying to calm my nerves and say I was in the right place if anything happened. I received amazing care and I'm so grateful to them. Max was released from hospital on December 23 and is now recovering at his £1.5 million Manchester home and enjoying going out for walks with Albert. That a pop star's nightmare, Max George's harrowing hospital experience. Max George, known worldwide for his success as part of the chart-topping band The Wanted, has lived the kind of life most people only dream of. Adored by millions, performing on the biggest stages, and leading a glamorous lifestyle, his world seemed perfect. But behind the bright lights and cheering crowds, Max recently faced a terrifying ordeal that brought him closer to the edge than he had ever imagined. The 35-year-old singer, who has captivated fans with his charisma and melodic voice, found himself in an unimaginable position, lying in a hospital bed, contemplating the end of his life. Stricken with an unknown illness, his condition had rapidly deteriorated, leaving him weak, vulnerable, and scared. For the first time in his life, Max George was faced with his mortality. "I couldn't stop thinking about the people I love," Max shared, his voice trembling as he recounted the experience. "I didn't know if I was going to make it out of there." As he lay in the sterile room, surrounded by the hum of medical equipment, a dark thought crept into his mind. What if this was it? What if he didn't survive to see another sunrise, to hold the people he cared about, or to hear the roar of the crowd that had become his second family? The uncertainty gnawed at him, pushing him to take an extraordinary step. With trembling hands, Max picked up his phone. There, in the glow of the screen, he began to type out his will, the weight of goodbye. For most people, writing a will is a carefully planned process, often done with legal professionals and at a much later stage in life. But Max didn't have time to plan. The urgency of his condition demanded immediate action. In those moments, his phone became a lifeline, a way to ensure that his last wishes and words would be known if the unthinkable happened. It was surreal, sitting there and typing those words. "It felt like I was saying goodbye before my time," Max admitted. "But I needed to make sure the people I love would know how much they meant to me. I couldn't leave anything unsaid." Every word was a struggle, not just physically but emotionally. He thought of. Every word was a struggle, not just physically but emotionally. He thought of his family, his bandmates, and his girlfriend, Maisie Smith, who had been his rock through so many ups and downs. He thought of his fans, who had stood by him through thick and thin. Each line he typed was filled with gratitude, love, and a deep sadness for the life he feared he was about to lose. A life in reflection. As Max recounted his harrowing experience, he spoke about the moments that flashed through his mind while he typed. From his childhood in Manchester to the meteoric rise of The Wanted, every memory felt sharper, more vivid, as if his mind was clinging to the life he wasn't ready to let go of. "I thought about my mum and dad, about how much they've done for me. I thought about the lads in the band and how we've been through everything together. And I thought about Maisie, how much I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her." Max's relationship with Maisie, the former EastEnders star and Strictly Come Dancing finalist, had been a beacon of happiness in his life. Their connection had blossomed into something deeply meaningful, and the thought of leaving her behind was unbearable. "She's my everything," Max said, his voice breaking. The thought of not being there for her, that hurt the most. The fight to survive. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Max wasn't ready to give up. Even as his body struggled, his spirit remained strong. The doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, offering not just medical care but words of encouragement that kept him fighting. "They were incredible," Max said of the hospital staff. "They didn't just treat my body, they gave me hope when I needed it most." His loved ones rallied around him as well. Maisie was by his side, holding his hand and reminding him of the strength he had within. Her unwavering support became a source of inspiration for Max, fueling his determination to overcome the odds. "That I owe so much to Maisie and my family," Max said. "They never let me feel like I was alone in this a second chance." Against all odds, Max began to recover. Slowly but surely, his condition improved, and the once dim light at the end of the tunnel grew brighter. As he regained his strength, he reflected on the experience that had brought him so close to the brink. It changes you, Max said. When you come that close to losing everything, you see life differently. You realize what really matters. For Max, the ordeal was a wake-up call. It reminded him of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. It also reignited his passion for music and his gratitude for the fans who had supported him throughout his career. That I've been given a second chance, and I don't want to waste it, he said. I want to live fully, love deeply, and give back as much as I can. A message of hope. Today, Max George is back on his feet, healthier and more determined than ever. His story has touched the hearts of fans around the world, many of whom have been inspired by his resilience and courage. I want people to know that it's okay to be scared, to feel vulnerable, Max said. But don't give up. Even in your darkest moments, there's always hope. Max's journey has also sparked important conversations about health, mental well-being, and the importance of being prepared for the unexpected. While he never imagined he would be typing out his will on a phone in a hospital bed, he hopes his story will encourage others to have those difficult conversations and plan for the future. I don't want anyone to go through what I did, he said. But if my experience can help someone else, then it was worth more appreciative of the life he's been given. And as he steps back into the spotlight, his story serves as a powerful reminder that even in the face of fear and uncertainty, the human spirit is capable of extraordinary things.